Want to do a better interview? Maybe you should use the P.E.A.C.E model. Check it out, tip number 93. Welcome back to 101 Interviewing Tips for Interviewers and Interrogators. This is tip number 93. I'm your host, Stan Walters. We're going to talk this time about the P.E.A.C.E model. P.E.A.C.E model of interviewing. Now, this P.E.A.C.E model, you've heard me mention before that back in 1984, that England passed a law and set of rules called the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. And it was designed to try to decrease the problems with victims and witnesses and suspects that were complicating or causing the collapse or disruption of good cases. So the model was to try to do a better job in containing control of evidence, but in particular, there was more attention being focused on the interview itself. Now, the problems that they'd had were several cases where there were some contaminated witness statements, there were some false confessions. And so it was decided, first of all, that interviews should be at least recorded in some form, video or audio, as a way to, number one, protect the rights of the victim, protect the rights of the witness, as well as protect the officer, and provide something for the courts to use when they were prosecuting or hearing the case, to show the dynamic that was going on between the interviewer and the interviewee. About 22 states in the United States have adopted this same type of guidelines where there's some type of recording going on. There's about roughly 2,500 to 2,750 agencies locally that are doing the same thing. But in 1992, there was a researcher named Boston. Now, Boston was looking at what was going on with interviews. And one of the things he did, he looked at 600 recorded interviews. Now, this was in England. And he found that the tactics and skills of interviewers were woefully, very terribly inadequate. He and also with other researchers found that the most common tactic used was called a persuasive model of interviewing. Now, initially persuasive, we talked about earlier about persuasion, is not a problem, except that the persuasive model was designed, the end game was borderlining on manipulation. The end game was to persuade the subject that they had to confess, that there was no other options, the evidence was overwhelming, the interviewer had complete control, investigator had complete control of the case, and it was all about focusing on getting a confession. This is where Boston said we had a problem. And in particular, he noted that the most common failure in interviewers is that they were being very aggressive, they're being very macho tactic, and are priding themselves on forcing the subjects to confess, which was creating very complex, difficult, long, arduous interviews with poor results. Found that those people also were very difficult to change their interviewing style. So it became a committee was put together by the Home Office, which is England's version of our Attorney General's office, Justice Department, to improve the interviewing model. And they came up with what we call the P.E.A.C.E model. Now, the P.E.A.C.E, P-E-A.C.E, is an acronym for different steps along the process. Now, I'll put these on the bulletin board here, whichever side I set it up on the background, so you can review it. The P stands for planning and preparation. The purpose here is prior to going into the room, what are you after? Do the investigation. Figure out where you're going to meet with the subject. Find out whether you're going to record or not record the situation. Find if you're going to have enough time to engage the subject and to spend the time necessary to do a complete interview. It also suggests that you write down some form of plan. Now, I like this idea because once you commit and you think through this, then your plan is embedded in your mind. You've already done some cognitive processes yourself as the interviewer. So it says, write down the plan. What are you looking for? What are the elements that need to make the case? Either if this is a victim or witness, that information is still necessary to close the loop and make the case, is it not? So do all that preparation and planning ahead of time. If this is a roadside interview or if you're a first responder, this may be very limited. However, you still know the pieces you need to make the case depending on the call, depending on your field interview. So that's still not a problem to think ahead, what is the end game of my interview? Second part is the E, engage and explain. The engage is what we talked about before, is building rapport with the subject. Make those connections, making the subject feel comfortable, getting some information about them, making that link with them so that they develop that like connection. Go back and look at our persuasion tactics, the one of like a little bit earlier. At least demonstrate respect for the subject and that you want to engage them and this is for their benefit. Explain to them the purpose of the interview. That what we're after is here, we need to get your statement as a victim, as a witness. We need to clear you as a subject. You are involved, or the police are involved, and you may have knowledge, information that we need. So explain to them what's going on. This is where I, as the interviewer, would make the comment to the subject, similar to what Hans Scharf did. Go back and look at our video, what would Hans do? That we have information, but it's important that we get it from you. I don't want to be biased. You need to give me the information. You need to make your statement to correct me, to make sure that I've got everything, because something may be left out. I will do everything I can to be honest and open with you. You will have to agree to be open and honest with me. We at least do that with me. Good way to engage. Okay? The A is to give the accounting. This is where the narrative-based interview comes in. Open-ended questions, timeline, different modes, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell that we've talked about before in our interview model. Okay, the 4 processes, orientation, we're letting them narrate here. And we assist them. The only time you interrupt is to clarify a point, or if you miss a point, get a name, but you continue. Keep going on. What happened next? And then, if necessary, do in reverse sequence. The persuasion here is for information, not confession. The persuasion is cooperation and alliance together, not me against the subject, me facilitating the victim, me assisting the witness with information. So you give the accounting. Then you have the challenge and the check, okay? You challenge the subject, okay, we have this information, you've said this, using the subject's own words. But forensics shows this, we have a problem, why is that? This goes back to when do you give up evidence? SUE, strategic use of evidence. You hold your evidence until this portion of clarification. Got that? For clarification and to clarify the information from the subject. Okay, the clarification and the challenge. So you can clarify what's missing in the timeline, what doesn't agree, what is a comparison of the statements of other victims and witnesses, what's a forensic have that's going on. Follow that? Okay. You got the P, E, account, challenge and clarify, then the closure. This is where you close out the interview with the subject. You want to leave them with a good frame of mind. Appreciate their cooperation. Is there anything else they need to add? Is something that you have missed? Is there a point that they think is important they need to clarify? Is there something that is incorrect that should be fixed? And you go back through that with them. And you can go back. You can loop back in to the account, clarification, and challenge. You can loop that 2 or 3 times if necessary. But the point is letting the subject know that you appreciate it because you want to set it up should you need to get to talk to them again, and so that they have ownership in their statement, that they're happy with it, they're complete with the statement, they believe you've given everything. The final piece is your evaluation. This is when you walk away from the interview. Now, you may take a break here. Leave the subject in the interview room, take a break, go back, look at your notes. Did I get each of the points I needed to get? Did I cover each of the details? Did we complete the clarification and the challenge like I wanted? Then you challenge yourself. What could I have done better in the interview? This is where you let somebody else take a look at the interview, take a look at the notes, what you've gotten. See if there's anything you missed that you may need to reschedule another interview if necessary. So evaluate your progress, evaluate the success you had with the interview.